Do what?
He said you might as well just not sit down and rise for the pledge.
Okay, we're ready. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 5:01. All stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Donna, please call the roll.
Commissioner Butch Schleier,
I'm present.
Chair Dean Hazelworth,
Present.
Commissioner Dustin Mock.
Present.
You have a quorum present.
Thank you. Any changes to the order of business this evening, Commissioners?
Nothing from me.
None from me.
No executive sessions, Phil? Okay. Prior minutes, August 12th and August 14th, special meeting tour. All right.
All right. with
Everything
me.
looked fine, yeah.
Stand approved as presented, Donna. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through G.
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through G as presented.
I'll second that.
Donna, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, monthly departmental report. Nice thick packet. Has everyone had a chance to review?
Absolutely.
Gonna skip
Yeah.
over.
Sorry, I did skip over. Before we do that, anyone here? I don't think so. Issues from persons not on the order of business this evening. Bill's on. Sheriff's officer, he's here to protect us, and we have Neil. Monthly departmental report. Anybody have any questions? Very well presented and put together again by our department
Absolutely.
heads. Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
I need to slow down. We're getting way ahead here. Transfer of funds to Capital Equipment Reserve. County Administrator Philip Smith Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is a follow-up to an item that Health Services Director Carrie McHugh presented to your commission on July 8th. This concerns the funding that we got from the federal government for a partial reimbursement of our remodeling expenses at 2507 Canterbury in support of the WIC program. We received a total of $146,689 that came in the current budget year. And Director McHugh had requested that you transfer that funding to capital with the potential for transferring it back over the next 2 years if the need arises for an assistant director position in that department. So, in order to do that, we just need to make sure that we have budget authority in the current year to transfer it out. Funding for the transfer in is included in the budget that you adopted last week. So the attached budget adjustment would just move funding from the budget stabilization account to the transfer to equipment replacement. The budget stabilization fund, per our budget policy, is set aside for the annual transfer of budget carryover amounts. Of course, it's a little early in the year to determine whether this is a carryover or not, but we would essentially pre-designate this funding as carryover under this action. So I don't actually need a motion from you. I just need you to agree that this is what you want to do, and we will move forward.
I'm in favor.
Me too.
Same here.
All right.
Get her
Thank you.
done. Move on to Public Works Shop, Mr. Bill Ring.
So our next item, Mr. Chair, is item that both Public Works Director Ring and I are bringing forward to authorize staff to engage our architect for some additional services. I've passed out at the dais this evening a couple drawings that we've had prepared so far. The first is a expansion that would basically take up the space along 280th Avenue between where the current Public Works shop is and the Noxious Weed building. and so deliveries for noxious weed would actually have to come down the road on the north side of the facility. This building is not fancy. It is, as you can see by the drawings, a metal building. There's a little bit of brickwork on the lower facade of the office part, but it's pretty plain. But it does provide for what Public Works needs in terms of the spaces, meeting room, locker rooms, a few things that they don't have now, relocation of the wash bay. The existing wash bay is in pretty bad shape. The budget estimate for this concept is $1,948,000. So Mr. Ring and I thought that number was kind of high, so we worked with the architect on what you see as concept number 2. Concept 2 provides for a much smaller addition to the existing Public Works shop, would allow for noxious weeds to continue to receive deliveries off of 280th rather than that sort of roundabout route. This also provides basically for a remodel of the existing office. So the only thing that would really be added to the office space is a conference room space. And you would just be looking at basically the existing footprint with some remodels. This concept still prices out at $1,426,000. We were hoping it would be a little lower than that, but when we got those numbers, we started talking with the architect about, okay, this is what it costs. These numbers are not out of line with what we've seen in past remodel work that the county has done, but what are we really achieving here? What could we do? And hit upon the idea that the one downfall of there are two major downfalls for Public Works remaining at its current site. One being the fact that not all Public Works facilities would be in a combined location because the landfill, of course, remains up on 55th and Hall. The other downfall being that this would essentially take up all the unused space in the parking area at that site, and there'd be really no room for future expansion in years down the road. So we talked about the fact that the commission has recently agreed to lease to purchase land immediately north of the landfill, and would it be possible to locate something at that site which would address both of those deficiencies of remaining at the current site. Can't guarantee you that building up there would be any cheaper than what you're seeing here, but if we're already talking about spending in the neighborhood of $1.5 to $2 million, what could we get for an equivalent amount of money at that site that would address those deficiencies? So the architect has submitted a proposal in the amount of $3,500 to go ahead and develop a concept 3, which would be a new build on that site to the north of the landfill. That's within my spending authorities, but I thought this would be a good chance just to bring these concepts to the commission, talk about what we've done so far, and make sure that you all wanted us to pursue this idea. If you thought this was the stupidest thing ever, we would just stop here and go with one of these concepts. Bill's here and can answer additional questions, but we're just happy to get your feedback on thoughts on this potential direction?
Bill Ring, Public Works Director. As the county administrator pointed out, we definitely need some kind of new facilities, large or whatever. Some of the other efficiencies that could be gained, as in this morning, the landfill, one of their backhoes went down. So we had to send 2 of our mechanics from our shop out there, which left us with no mechanics, to try to get the backhoe running. If we were co-located at the same facility, we could do all their maintenance at the county shop instead of having to send people out or send a low boy out and bring it back, et cetera. We also talked about, with the landfill expansion, we're gonna have to do something with the weigh station where they come in. We could immediately cut that back as part of this process and only locate much the same as when you go to the elevator, just a person that could monitor the inbound and outbound traffic, because Vern could have an office right up, basically we'd be building next to the transfer station. So we would get that. Plus, the other thing is that the yard at the county shop now is packed. I know you know that, you farm next to it. We have no room to basically buy rock, crushed concrete. We have no place to store anything. We would have an abundance of land where we could fence off our area, if you will. And if we doubled our size to 20 acres, it would be a God's plenty to be able to have rock and sand and the various things that we buy, large amounts of commodities, and have them available. And then the other thing is that we don't have any form, of training facility, conference room, meeting room, whatever. We have no place. You guys all know that, you've been out there. We would be able to have a nice enough facility in size, but we'd also have parking, because we have enough acreage out there that we could build a parking lot, even if it was just a gravel parking lot, similar to the fairground. But we would not have the issues we have here or at the Emergency Services Building, because we would have plenty of ground. So that's just some more of the concepts. And then we would also bring the environmental office with us, which would give us some efficiencies for shared office work. We could have a little more cross-training. We would have more efficiencies with the permitting processes that we do now, where we have to manually bring it down here. And they're storing a set of records, we're storing a set of records. Just some things like that could help immensely. And then we could also have more cross-training, so that if one of the office people at the environmental office, fell sick and so they were short-staffed, we would have other office staff that at least would have a concept. But if we take somebody now and I was to send them down here, well, now we have an opening out there. And we got to fill 2 positions with 2 people, but we could, work together to try to fill some of those needs should it arise.
Commissioners, questions? Dustin?
No, I think that this is a great idea to at least get some preliminary drawings and numbers put together. I can echo some of the things that you've said as far as my discussions with Vern, and he was more concerned about paid time off and how short-staffed they are, and where he can really get in a pickle in terms of needing his employees to take their paid time off, so that he says they'd be willing to work, but they got to take it or they lose it. So there's a couple concerns that I have with it. One is that transfer station doesn't smell the greatest, so I don't know how much land there is there, and what kind of work environment we'd be working with. Have the wind was headed your direction.
Well, can I answer for
yeah,
you?
go
Okay.
ahead.
Our thoughts were to build it north on the side road going, on 240th.
Okay.
And 9 days out of 10, the wind, if it's blowing, is out of the north.
Yeah.
You're going to have an air-conditioned building, at least the office space. So and if there's enough space between it.
Yeah.
I go out there, and when you stand down at the weigh station outside.
Yeah, you can't. Even right before you drive in, it's pretty
Right.
tough.
When you're in the contained environment of the transfer station, That's just a collection of, years and years and years. But once you're away from it, I don't think that would be a large problem.
Yep. And I know we discussed even selling off some of this acreage when we got it, so, the idea that we get out of it, what we paid for it is probably 0 to none, but maybe if we could utilize it, it would be a good option. One thing I would think of too here, and obviously you're the guy that could fix this situation, is I know that a lot of our employers that are on dirt roads like this, they struggle because employees can't keep their cars in good condition at all. So the idea of a decent parking lot really could help, us retain employees. And in fact, I know that at Hess Services, they talked to us at length about their need to, with our project, that it would really help them retain employees, because who wants to have a black car, clean it one day, and then drive it on a rock road the next day? So, I think retaining employees could be a benefit there. One question I would have is, how many years are we talking as far as our expansion and our needed expansion are we talking before we start running out of room again?
Oh, we've been out of room now. I mean,
With the new land, if we were.
the landfill?
Yeah.
We're still a couple years out. I mean, we've got Penco Engineering as our environmental engineers that are working on the expansion. They've started the process already with KDHE. And what their preliminary thoughts are is that once they can get in a temporary permit, we can go on the north side of the fence and move our burning piles over there. And then we still have the entire area where we burn now that we can fill that with C&D.
Okay.
And that would probably take 2, maybe 3 years,
Okay.
based on current volumes.
And then after that, say we take some of our acreage to build a new building, are we talking 50 years before we need?
So the current landfill site is 60 acres.
Okay.
And what you acquired or acquiring in your lease purchase is 180 acres. And the current landfill site has been there 40 plus years. So, I think you're talking
100 years.
100 years before.
Plus, consider that at the current landfill site, a lot of that area is what we call closed cells from when it was a direct burial municipal waste.
Right.
So the actual C&D footprint is not near part, it's a smaller part of the 60-acre parcel.
Okay. And how long has the regulation on the C&D been the way that it is now, as far as our discussion of burying it and creating another layer? Do you guys know how long that's been that way?
Well, the subtitle D regulations went into effect about 20 years ago.
So about 20 years we've been on
Yeah,
this.
I want to say 94. I guess that'd be
No,
25 years ago.
That's on the municipal waste, household waste.
Oh, on municipal.
Correct.
So
The
what-
C&D, I don't know, that's just been direct burial because it's non-contaminants.
Right.
It's basically 2x4s, which wood going back into the ground. It's concrete came out of the components of
So it's
concrete.
been similar regulation forever
Right.
on that. Okay.
And
Yeah,
there's- not that I know.
theoretically, I suppose the feds or the state could come back and regulate C&D to a higher standard at some
Yeah.
point in the future. But
But we got a lot of room to play with there.
yeah.
Butch?
I'd like to see us proceed with this. I think there's no question we do have to address the public works with their needs as far as space and storage. And if this concept can create more efficiencies along with it, we need to explore it and see where it takes us.
I'm in favor of it also, to explore that. I guess, Bill, I would like when your engineer's there to have him look at that. That whole area that's by the scale house now, that's completely flat going west and north, and, maybe I would think that'd be a lot less dirt moving than moving up to the north end, but might be just something to visit with him about.
You mean to put a building down there? Everything down there sells. You can't, even where the trailer's sitting, it's a cell
That's a
underneath.
cell too there?
Yeah.
I thought all the cells were farther west.
No,
Uh-uh.
that has trash under it. And then you've got the whole strip along 55th Street that runs along C and D, so you've got that that's municipal, you've got the access road and then C and D. So there's really no flat ground down there that hasn't been, there's not enough space between the weigh station and the transfer station now to put in something of this size.
You'd use that area for storing rock and sand, et cetera. Couldn't you?
I guess you could. Well, one of the things that we talked about with trying to organize our thoughts on the landfill expansion is to take the weigh station and move it a little closer to the transfer station so that we could have a little bit tighter control on traffic. And it's just like with everything going on, and I do want to thank you because I'll just interject this here for the waiving the tree fees. A lot of positive feedback from that because it's saving a lot of time. But even with that right now, just go out there like last Friday or Thursday or Saturday, the people are out into the road, which is not safe either. Right. So because they have to wait their turn. There's a guy coming down the hill, there's a guy coming in. And so our thought was if we could move that in further to get people off the road and then look at possibly having 2 scales, like an elevator. So come in on this side, I weigh this much. I come out on the other side, I weigh this much less. My charge is 3 tons times. And that if it was a narrower, not the trailer you have now where you could actually have a person work both sides, both scales, they could hand the tickets, they check them in, check them out. And again, get greater efficiency and move people in and out in a timely fashion where now they don't know what to do because, you've got 6 vehicles coming down from the transfer station and you got 4 guys coming in.
Okay.
And then the suggestion then would be, and it would be up to the commission, but to then take, because we didn't talk about this, but this would also, if we did this concept, we could build a facility while we still stay in the facility that we have. When it's ready to go, we move, and then we put that on the market and see if we can't recoup dollars back to the county. And because if any of these remodeling, you have a major undertaking of how are we going to operate and fix vehicles. Well, because all these involve tearing the floors out of the shop. So again, that's another positive towards considering, depending on dollars, I understand, building a new facility and having it basically turnkey so that we could, in the course of a week or 2, we could get the majority of our stuff moved out there. We've got the equipment to move our own stuff. So that's not a concern of mine.
Okay.
I would say on this, in the beginning when I first saw these drawings, that the idea was we were trying to be as utilitarian about this as possible, and that's typically what we ask of Road and Bridge. Obviously, is utilitarian and get things fixed as efficiently as possible. But from the very beginning, I hated that we were right by the railroad tracks and getting constrained on so much. As your equipment gets bigger, it's harder and harder for you guys to get around there. And there's the concern that Philip brought up about our ability to expand size is so constrained by the railroad tracks here that I do like the idea of us looking into this, at least seeing dollars.
Okay, I think we've all agreed. Phil, go ahead. Okay.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. County Administrator Report, Philip Smith-Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few items this evening. First off, I had sent commissioners an email. The City of Hayes has some vacancies on the Hayes Area Planning Commission for folks who live outside the city limits but in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. They would love some names from the county commission. So if you all think of some folks. No, Munger is not in the ETJ. I saw that look.
Just gonna see a response.
So if you have some names, please get them to me, and I will forward those over to the city. Second item this evening, we have talked a little bit about the courthouse restrooms. I got an initial estimate for that, and I was a little surprised by that number. So we are working with Greg Erbert on how much of that we can do in-house to try and drive that cost down before I bring something to the commission. Also working on our ADA transition plan that I mentioned previously. Got a couple of folks that I've sent our information to and getting some estimates for that. Talked to one of them today. He said he thinks it'll probably be about 2 more weeks before he gets numbers back to us. So hopefully soon. Third, I believe the commission received an email from KLPG on Friday, and so I'm just needing to know if you all are making the trip to Colby on October 3rd and 4th for their festivities out there. I can make reservations and that sort of thing, so please let me know. And last but certainly not least, just a reminder about the commission's work session next Tuesday, the 27th. We will be talking a little bit more about potential sales tax. So that's all I have this evening.
Thank you.
What's the location of that work session?
Brief space
Brief space.
Free space? Okay.
in the basement. Commission reports, Butch?
Yeah, I spent most of my day Thursday hauling branches out to solid waste, and I had multiple loads of branches. And I was just amazed at how well the solid waste crew was working out there. Several times I seen the tractor push branches up after they were hauled out or left off. The burning was going on, the pile kept moving, and the branches kept coming in. It was orchestrated very, very well. And just want to give a big compliment to all of the staff at Public Works, to Bill and to Vern, because it was handled just really well and really efficient.
I've heard a lot of good compliments about that too, Bill. You guys did a good job. Anything else?
Nope, that's all.
Dustin?
The only thing to report on, we did have the visit from Senator Moran that we all attended, and I just want to thank him for making the time to come out to Ellis County to hear about our build grant request and to see one of the great thriving businesses in Ellis County. And I think he had made the mention that it seemed like everybody had seen Hess Services but him, so he was kind of mad about that. But you know, when you break your leg, there's not a whole lot we can do getting you around out at Hess Services. So glad to see he's healing up from that. I leave on Wednesday morning for Leadership Kansas. I'll be in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and I'm excited to see how they do things down there. I feel like right now the Fort Hays students started their first day here, and I want to see the comparison of our communities. I think you know, one of my classmates is the Board of Regents president, and he is constantly singing the praises of Fort Hays State University and the job that they're doing. So it'll be unique to see the difference in what's going on at Pitt State and try to come back with some ideas of how we can continue to succeed with Fort Hays State University. The Arts Council's Art Walk is on Friday, and I had seen a story about them having some artwork for sale. I know it was a tough thing for us with our outside funding as far as you know, letting go of the funding for them, even though it was a smaller dollar amount. So I want to encourage everybody that gets out for that to maybe swing by the Arts Council and see if there's anything there that you would like to buy as a donation. Echoing on the storm situation, I think it's something that we should, you know, we've all had training on it now, but part of the reason why we need to keep our finances in such good order in Ellis County is the idea that we have these disasters that come, and so as public officials, we get taught we need to have cash, and the reason we need to have cash is in case something happens. It's typically years before we see any help from the state or federal government, and we need to be able to finance those situations. And so as we continue to catch a little bit of flack here and there for some of the cuts that we make and some of the hard decisions we've had to make, I always keep that in the back of my mind, that this is, even though it looks like there might be a little cash there for here and there, it might not be. And while hailstorms are hitting and winds blowing 90 mile an hour and church roofs are being pulled off, I'm kind of glad that we are keeping ourselves in a great financial situation for the future. So that's all from me.
Thank you. I too went on the tour out to Hess Services for about the 10th time, so always changes a little bit every time you go. He's always up to something new, Dan is, so that was a good tour, and thanks to the city of Hayes getting that put together, and for Senator Moran coming out, that was nice to have him there and his staff, so thank you both for coming also. Phil, thank you for being part of that, and Bill going along and being part of that also. And I have a conference call with Workforce One tomorrow morning at 10:30 from 10:30 to 11:30, so if it doesn't get canceled like the last two, so I guess we'll see. That's all I have. Anything else?
Nope.
We will adjourn at 5:33. Thank you all for coming.
So what I heard is you're free at 8:30?